In episode 5, Luke, Moira, and June all gear up to go in to Gilead for the first time in years. Luke is pretending to be a driver, while June and Moira are dressed up as Marthas. Their job is going to be simple. They're going to get into Jezebel's, they're going to find a contact, they're going to let the contact know exactly what Mayday's plans are in a week, and then they meet up with Luke outside and get away. When they get in, though, they initially don't find Janine. That's the person they're looking for. That's going to be the easiest contact they have. They go to where she would be getting dressed, and one of the girls lets her know that she's probably up in the penthouse because the commanders are heading over. That wasn't part of the plan. Neither June or Moira were expecting that, and that kind of puts a wrench in this whole situation. They're going to have to adapt on the fly. They do, however, head up to the penthouse after a close call with one of their would-be bosses, I guess. And when they get up there, that's when they see Janine for the first time. She's in good spirits as she enters the penthouse, waiting for the commanders, and then she notices June. June's face is covered up, but you can tell it's June just from the eyes. This is something Janine was certainly not expecting, and she stops what she's doing. She walks over to June, and she asks, "Wait, are you guys Marthas now?" And June tells her no, Mayday. Janine quickly tries to get the lowdown. If they're being rescued that day, this is something the girls have been waiting for. But unfortunately, the conversation is broken up when the commanders start filing in. That's when Janine gives both Moira and June the location of a meeting spot, saying, "Hey, I'll get there when I can, and we can discuss this further." They do run into an issue, though, as they're trying to leave the room. Commander Bell, who is probably the worst one of them all, ends up dropping a glass and demanding that one of the Marthas come over and clean it up. And that Martha's going to be June. In order not to create suspicion, she starts to clean it up, but Commander Bell starts saying, No, on my leg. Higher. And all the while, he's doing this in front of other commanders. He's trying to impress them. Until finally, one commander stops it all. It's Commander Lawrence. As soon as he tells Bell to stop, June's eyes get wide. Commander Lawrence was never somebody that would go to a Jezebel's, and yet, here he is. But the bigger issue is, if Commander Lawrence sees June, she's not sure what he's going to do. So when Commander Lawrence walks over to this Martha, at least in his eyes, and tries to kind of rescue her from this uncomfortable situation, June turns away from him and quickly gets out of the room. Her and Moira then go to that empty room and just wait for Janine. Getting away from the penthouse is going to be tricky. I mean, most of the commanders are simply talking about New Bethlehem. They're congratulating Commander Lawrence because families continue to get reunited. It's been a surprising success so far. And Commander Lawrence actually starts pitching them on expansion. He's got a few locations set out that would be perfect for expanding New Bethlehem and expanding the ideas. But Commander Bell interrupts all of that when he starts getting really inappropriate with Janine. It's becoming clear that Commander Bell plans on taking Janine into a separate room and doing God knows what to her. And Commander Lawrence doesn't want to see that happen. So he stops Commander Bell and he says, No, I'm going to take her. And once was fine. I mean, Commander Bell looks at it like, well, I gave you my girl previously. I allowed it to happen. But no, now you're just going to take her? I can't allow that to happen. He puts up a fight about it, and that's when Commander Lawrence hits him below the belt, figuratively at least. He questions Commander Bell on exactly what he's doing there, how he's incompetent, and more importantly, how nobody likes him and nobody respects him. And that shuts Commander Bell up quite a bit. It puts an end to the pissing contest, and it awards the trophy, i.e. Janine in this situation, to Commander Lawrence, where he and Janine walk into a room knowing full well that not a hand is going to be laid on her. Now, she does thank Commander Lawrence, but she reminds him, you're not a good guy. I mean, compared to them, yeah, sure, you're a good guy, but you're not a good guy. She then tells him that she has to do something, and she'll be back in about 10 minutes. But before she leaves, she wants to show him something. In the room that they're currently located in, there's a picture on the wall, but when you take the picture off, there's a peephole that allows you to spy on what's going on in the penthouse. It allows you to hear the conversations clearly. So with Janine leaving, she wants Commander Lawrence to hear exactly what his contemporaries think of him. And when Commander Lawrence goes over to that peephole, he finds out the hard truth about New Bethlehem. The fact that they're not planning on expanding. In fact, what their actual plans are is to let this go for about 3-4 years maybe, rope everybody back in, then close the borders up and get back to the way it was. back to the hard Gilead. Commander Lawrence is going to end up taking the blame for it and likely will end up on the wall. Basically, everything that these commanders have told him is just placating him. None of them like New Bethlehem, and while it is working, they don't plan on keeping it that way for long. Not if they have their way. As for Janine, she is able to get to that room. She meets up with June and Moira, she gives them a big hug, and she finds out exactly what is going on with the plan. Both Janine and Moira tell her that in a week, they're going to be rescued. They're going to come back for all the girls and Jezebels. They're going to kill the commanders. And then they get the information they need from Janine on time changes, where exactly they should go, that sort of thing. Janine does also give them a stack of letters that she says, these are from the girls. I need you to get them out. Whatever you do, get these letters to the girls' families. And both Moira and June agree. But then June completely diverts from the plan, asking Janine, do you want to come with us tonight? And Moira steps in and goes, June, what are you doing? But June continues, telling Janine that she can. She can come with them tonight. Even though she is their in for Jezebels, they can just find somebody else. And Moira has to be the bad cop. Moira has to say, no, June, we're going to be back in a week. And while it seems like Janine does understand this, and it seems like Janine is fine with this, once Janine leaves the room, Moira loses it on June. Because to Moira, this is another example of June just going rogue, doing her own thing, and not thinking about the bigger picture, i.e. Mayday. And June admits, yeah, I'm not thinking about Mayday. I'm thinking about the girl that I left behind in Chicago. That's who I'm thinking about. Me and that girl have been through hell together. Moira, though, reminds her that if Janine were to be missing, then that is going to boost up security, and their entire plan, everything they're going to do in a week, goes out the window. But this is a bigger issue for Moira. As she tells June, it's always you. Your grief, your guilt, your trauma. And what ends up happening is they get into a giant pissing contest about trauma, who had it worse in Gilead, who was sexually abused more. I mean, it's uncomfortable. But it does seem to get through to June. She admits that, yeah, Moira, you did have it worse than me. I mean, you were getting abused every day. I was only having it like once a month. And after a little bit, Moira says, yeah, you know what, but it's not like you weren't getting abused. We were both getting abused. As the two both find common ground, and they both agree that if they were to get into another pissing contest about trauma, it's letting the commanders win, a soldier interrupts it, walking into the room and taking both June and Moira off guard. At first he asks, what are you two doing? And they just say, we're cleaning. But then he sees that they have pens and papers, and that sort of thing is not allowed. The soldier can tell that this means something to both Moira and June, so he's going to use it to his advantage. He locks it up, and he tells them if they want it back, they're going to give him something. At first, he wants Moira to bend over the bed, which she tells him to F off, and then he throws her on the bed. For Moira, this has to be difficult. I mean, she's back in Jezebel's, and she's once again about to be sexually abused, but this time she's not going to take it. She fights back, and June fights back. And the strength of these two women end up taking this guy down and killing him. But now the issue is they have a body. They know they need to get the hell out of that room because the meeting with Luke is in a matter of minutes, but they also know that they need to do something with this body, and they decide to take it with them. They go downstairs into the incinerator room, and they throw the body in there, figuring that this soldier will end up coming up missing, and he won't report in, and it will be fishy, but if there's no body, they might just be able to get away with this. The issue, however, pops up when they try to leave. Right before they exit the door, June notices that Luke is there, but he's being commanded to leave. At this point, the soldier that they killed hasn't checked in, there are sirens, and there's a shutdown. Luke, who is pretending to pick up barrels, is told, you got to come back tomorrow. But he doesn't want to leave without June. The soldier, though, isn't about to let Luke stay, and he beats the crap out of him and basically forces him to leave. And that means that June and Moira are going to be stuck there for a while. Now, they certainly don't want to be stuck in Jezebel's, so they go to leave. The problem is there's no way to leave without a commander's key card. And that's when June sees Commander Lawrence leaving Jezebel's. It's super risky, but as Commander Lawrence goes to leave, June jumps in front of his car and stops him, revealing herself. Commander Lawrence is shocked, and June says, you got to help us out. You got to take us with you. He thinks about it for a little bit, but then he pops the trunk. He tells both women to get in. And as June is asking, can you take us to the border? He just shuts the trunk. So they have no idea where they're going. Now, over with New Bethlehem, Serena meets with Aunt Lydia, who is still upset about what happened with the girls that she was looking after, the handmaids. Serena kind of looks at Aunt Lydia like, you really thought they were going to have a life? Seriously? And Aunt Lydia says, yeah, I really did. That's what I was told. And while Serena feels for the girls in this moment, it wasn't really something she was thinking about too much, but she does have an idea. She opened up that fertility clinic in Canada, and it's doing great. She figures maybe we can open up a fertility clinic in New Bethlehem. And in that instance, maybe those handmaids that aren't handmaids anymore, maybe they can work at the fertility clinic. Maybe they can help out. And it would keep them from going to the colonies, and it would keep them from going to Jezebel's. And this appears to be something that Aunt Lydia is completely on board with. She thinks it's a great idea. In fact, she calls it a calling from God. A courier, though, interrupts this conversation to let Serena know that she's being summoned by Commander Wharton. He wants to meet with her before he goes back to D.C. with Rose. So they're going to meet later that day, and it's pretty clear the two are smitten at this point. But before he meets with Serena, he has to have an uncomfortable conversation with his son-in-law, Nick. Because while all these families are being reunited in New Bethlehem, there's a security problem. Those two eyes that Nick shot, nobody knows that Nick was the one who pulled the trigger. Everybody just thinks that it was the rebels. And because of the fact that it was so close to the border, it's got a lot of commanders on edge, one of them being Commander Wharton. And the blame ends up going to Nick because he's in charge of this sort of thing. Because of this, Wharton puts a lot of pressure on Nick to find out who pulled the trigger and bring them to justice. But that's when he throws a curveball in all of this. Because Nick thought that he killed both of those guys, but it turns out he didn't. It turns out one is in a coma, and he's actually coming around a little bit. It's still a long shot that this kid would survive, but he's starting to say words here or there, and that's going to be a giant problem for Nick. I mean, if this kid really starts talking, he can tell everybody, oh yeah, it was Nick who pulled the trigger. Nick can't let that happen. So later in the day, he goes to visit the kid in the hospital, and it's uncomfortable. His mom is there, and his mom is just heaping praise on Nick, saying how great Nick is and how much her son looked up to Nick. All the while, Nick is just waiting for an opportunity to pull the plug on this kid. And when he gets his opportunity, he locks the door, and we're going to assume he took care of business. Now, as for Commander Wharton, he ends up meeting up with Serena at that predetermined location. And that predetermined location is a library that Commander Wharton commissioned for Serena. The library is actually going to be for the boys and the girls of New Bethlehem, but it's going to be in her name. It's also going to be in his name because he wants to make he and Serena a thing. He wants to marry her. Serena kind of gives all the reasons on why they shouldn't do this, i.e., I don't want to move to D.C., I don't want to move to Boston, but every time she gives a I don't want to do this, he's okay with it. He just wants to find a solution. He doesn't want to hear about the problems. Commander Wharton is very committed to Serena. When he finally asks the question, will you marry me? She gives a resounding yes.
Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.